James, the architect Malone and Sophia, Shadow Reed ruled Liverpool's underworld with an iron grip, masterminding a drug empire so secretive and ruthless that for over a decade, no one could touch them. From encrypted phones to offshore accounts, their web of power stretched across borders, leaving law enforcement chasing ghosts. But behind the silence and shadows, cracks were forming, and what followed would shake Merseyside to its core. In the early 2000s, Liverpool was undergoing a transformation, not just in its skyline or economy, but in its criminal underworld. The old guard, built on violence and reputation, was starting to crumble. Long-standing crime families who had ruled the streets through intimidation were either behind bars or in decline. In their place emerged a new kind of criminal, calculated, business-minded, and low-profile. They didn't care for flashy cars or public feuds. They wanted power, but more importantly, they wanted longevity. They became known in whispers as the River Kings. The River Kings weren't a single gang, but a network of tightly connected operators who shared one goal: control the drug trade through Liverpool's shipping lanes. Unlike their predecessors, they avoided local disputes and kept a low profile in the media. Their plan was simple: stay quiet, move large quantities, and never get their hands dirty. They recognized that the port of Liverpool was their biggest advantage. The River Mersey didn't just run through the city, it connected them to the world, and that's how they began building their empire. They started with small-scale imports, packages hidden in food shipments, electronics and textiles. But by 2005 they were bringing in hundreds of kilos at a time. The quality of the product set them apart. Cocaine purity levels in Liverpool suddenly spiked, flooding the market and putting pressure on smaller dealers who couldn't compete. The River Kings had access to direct sources in South America, using intermediaries in Spain and the Netherlands to smooth the process. Each step was planned, each connection carefully cultivated. What made them even harder to stop was their discipline. No phones, no violence unless absolutely necessary. Meetings were rare and always in public, surrounded by noise and movement. They used burner devices that were destroyed after a single use. When police tried surveillance, they found themselves watching ghost figures, never in one place long enough to track, never saying anything worth recording. The gang's core members appeared to live modest lives, blending into the city's business and real estate sectors. While other groups drew attention with turf wars and street shootouts, the River Kings were patient. They didn't chase control of neighborhoods. They chased control of the supply chain. And they were just getting started. As the River Kings' empire expanded, so did the need for secrecy. Moving vast quantities of drugs required more than just clever smuggling routes. It demanded absolute control over communication. By 2012, traditional burner phones were no longer safe. Law enforcement had upgraded its surveillance capabilities, and phone taps were catching lower-level operatives. The leaders knew they needed something more secure. That's when they turned to encrypted phones. Devices designed specifically to keep conversations invisible. These weren't just any smartphones. They were stripped-down models with no GPS, camera or microphone. They ran on custom operating systems and used encrypted messaging apps that automatically deleted messages after they were read. Some even had panic buttons that would wipe the phone clean in seconds. The most popular were Encrochat, Phantom Secure, and Sky ECC platforms used by criminals across Europe. The River Kings adopted them early and taught their entire network how to use them. Communication became safer, faster, and more controlled. The impact was immediate. Police surveillance hit a wall. Investigators could see the drugs hitting the streets, could track the violence that followed, but the source remained invisible. Raids turned up clean phones or wiped devices. Informants had little to offer because even foot soldiers didn't know who was at the top. Everyone had a code name. No one used real locations. Meetings were coordinated through a web of timed messages, rerouted through servers in countries that didn't cooperate with British law enforcement. What made it worse for police was the discipline within the organization. The River Kings didn't trust outsiders. New recruits were vetted thoroughly, and anyone caught breaking protocol was cut off. The leadership rarely spoke directly to anyone. Orders were passed down in layers, with each level only knowing what they needed to. This compartmentalization made infiltration nearly impossible. Encrypted phones didn't just protect them from the police, they helped the River Kings run more efficiently. Shipments could be coordinated across borders in minutes. Cash pickups and drop-offs were scheduled with military precision. Even disputes within the organization were settled digitally, with no face-to-face risk. The phones became the backbone of the operation. As long as the encryption held, the empire was untouchable. And for years it did. The strength of the River Kings wasn't just in their technology or smuggling routes, it was in their people. Unlike many criminal groups that ruled through fear, the River Kings built their power on loyalty and opportunity. They understood that the drug trade was dangerous and that trust was rare. So instead of ruling with an iron fist, they created a system where those who worked for them felt valued, protected, and invested in the success of the whole operation. Young men from some of Liverpool's toughest neighborhoods were given a chance. A chance many had never had before. These recruits weren't just enforcers, they were the lifeblood of the network. Promises of steady cash, expensive cars, and a sense of belonging drew them in. They were taught early that silence was the most valuable currency. Speaking to outsiders meant death, not just for themselves but for their families. The idea was simple. Loyalty in exchange for security and wealth. The River Kings operated much like a business. Everyone had a specific role. At the bottom were the foot soldiers, runners, lookouts, and street dealers who kept the flow steady. Above them were trusted lieutenants managing logistics and finances, coordinating shipments, and ensuring payments were collected. At the top, the core leadership stayed hidden, insulated from daily risks. They made decisions but never got involved in street-level dealings. Training was strict. New recruits learned quickly that mistakes were costly. There were no second chances for those who talked to police or betrayed the group. The punishments were swift and brutal, but many accepted the risks because the rewards were far greater than anything else available to them. The gang created a sense of family, but it was also a code they lived by. Protect the group at all costs, and the group protects you. This structure helped the River Kings remain untouchable. Even when arrests happened at lower levels, the leadership stayed safe, insulated by layers of secrecy and loyalty. Their men on the ground acted as a buffer, taking the risks so the bosses could keep running the operation. This loyal network, combined with careful planning and encryption, made the River Kings nearly impossible to break. The power of their empire wasn't just in what they controlled, but in who they controlled and how fiercely those people protected them. By 2015, the River Kings had established a drug distribution network that stretched far beyond Liverpool's city limits. Their reach extended across the entire United Kingdom, tapping into cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow. What set them apart was their ability to move massive quantities of cocaine through a supply chain so well-oiled that few outside law enforcement could fully understand it. The key to their success was the Liverpool Seaforth docks, one of the largest ports in the UK, which became their gateway for smuggling vast shipments of drugs into the country. The operation began thousands of miles away, in the coca-producing regions of South America. The River Kings' contacts in Colombia and Peru ensured the cocaine was high quality and plentiful. From there, the shipments were hidden inside legitimate cargo containers full of fruit, electronics, or clothing, making it nearly impossible to spot illegal substances without thorough inspections. The drugs would first land in ports in Spain or the Netherlands, where corrupt officials or cooperative freight workers helped move the shipments along swiftly and quietly. Once the containers reached Liverpool, the gang's loyal workers at the docks sprang into action. These trusted individuals were key to unloading and redirecting the shipments to secret warehouses scattered around Merseyside and the greater northwest. From these hidden locations, smaller consignments would be sent out to local dealers and gangs operating in other parts of the UK, feeding the demand for cocaine in cities that were previously difficult to reach for organized crime groups. The scale of the business was staggering. Some estimates suggest the River Kings moved several tons of cocaine every year. making Liverpool one of the main hubs for cocaine distribution in Europe. The money flowing from these operations was equally impressive. Millions in cash were collected weekly, then laundered through a complex system involving fake businesses, cash-in-hand deals, and offshore accounts. Despite the massive scale of their operation, violence remained minimal. The River Kings preferred to keep a low profile and avoid unnecessary attention from the police. Their goal was to run a smooth and efficient operation, making more money by staying out of the headlines. But as their control grew, so did the risks, and the cracks in their carefully built empire would soon begin to show. For years the River Kings maintained a carefully controlled balance, avoiding violence whenever possible, to keep law enforcement at bay. Their strategy was to fly under the radar, focusing on profits rather than street battles. But in 2017 that fragile peace shattered. A rival gang, hungry for power and willing to use force, attempted to hijack one of the River Kings' major cocaine shipments. What followed was a brutal and deadly response that sent shockwaves through Liverpool's criminal underworld. The attempted hijacking wasn't just a random act of theft, it was a direct challenge to the River Kings' authority. The rival crew had underestimated the reach and ruthlessness of the organization. Within days a violent retaliation unfolded. Unlike anything the city had seen in years, 2 men were found dead near the docks, execution style. Both had ties to the rival gang. Their bodies were left in public places as a clear warning. The River Kings were still in control and would respond with lethal force when crossed. A 3rd man, suspected to be involved in the hijacking plot, disappeared without a trace. His sudden vanishing added an eerie layer to the violence, fueling rumors of abductions and secret punishments. The message was unmistakable. Betrayal and attempts to undermine the River Kings would be met with zero tolerance. This violent outburst caught the attention of the media and police alike. For years, law enforcement had struggled to build cases against the gang due to their secrecy and discipline. But now, the bloodshed forced the issue into the spotlight. Detectives reopened cold cases and stepped up surveillance on known associates. Pressure mounted to bring the violence under control and dismantle the network responsible. But even as the police intensified their efforts, the River Kings remained elusive. Their leadership went into hiding, communications became more cautious, and the encrypted networks grew even more vital. Still, the sudden surge in violence exposed cracks in the gang's careful facade, hinting that maintaining control through fear and secrecy might no longer be enough. The balance of power was shifting, and the coming years would reveal just how vulnerable the River Kings truly were. The River Kings' empire was not just built on drugs and muscle. It was also a fortress of money hidden far from the eyes of the authorities. While street-level dealers handled cash, the true wealth of the organization was locked away in offshore accounts and complex financial structures designed to keep the police chasing shadows. Their strategy was simple but effective. Move money quickly, quietly, and across borders where laws and enforcement differed, making it nearly impossible to follow the trail. Offshore banking became a critical part of their operation. Shell companies were created in countries known for strict banking secrecy, such as the Cayman Islands, Belize, and Cyprus. These companies held bank accounts, owned properties, and managed investments, all under fake names or trusted intermediaries. This setup allowed the River Kings to funnel millions without raising suspicion. Money earned from cocaine sales in Liverpool would be deposited in one country, then moved as investments or loans to another, creating layers of transactions designed to confuse any investigation. Cryptocurrency also entered the mix. Bitcoin and other digital currencies offered an extra layer of anonymity. Transactions could be made without traditional banks, reducing the risk of detection. The gang used crypto wallets to store and transfer money between members and to buy luxury goods, cars, and real estate across Europe. The volatile nature of cryptocurrencies helped hide the origin of the funds even further. Luxury properties in places like Marbella, Dubai, and Monaco became not just symbols of wealth but tools for laundering money. Nightclubs, car washes, and import-export businesses were often fronts, legitimate on paper but mostly serving to clean dirty cash. By investing in these ventures, the River Kings made their fortunes look legitimate and insulated themselves from direct exposure. This financial maze was a massive headache for investigators. Tracing millions through multiple countries, currencies and fake identities required international cooperation, time, and resources. For years, the River Kings appeared untouchable because their money was always one step ahead. They were masters of hiding wealth, ensuring that even if one part of their empire was exposed, the vast majority of their fortune remained safe and out of reach. By 2019, the growing suspicious transactions through layers of offshore companies and cryptocurrency exchanges. This part of the investigation was slow and complex, as the gang's financial networks were carefully designed to hide their activities. But piece by piece, investigators began uncovering the money laundering system that fueled the entire operation. A breakthrough came when intelligence revealed a critical weakness in the gang's communication methods. While most members used highly secure encrypted phones, a faction was still relying on an older, less secure version of Encrypted. This vulnerability gave law enforcement a chance to intercept messages and map the network structure. Using this weakness, Operation Glasshouse intensified surveillance and prepared for coordinated arrests. They moved carefully to avoid tipping off the gang, conducting raids across Liverpool, Manchester, and even abroad. The scope of the operation was unprecedented. Hundreds of officers involved in simultaneous actions targeting drug shipments, safe houses, and financial hubs. Operation Glasshouse marked a turning point. For the first time, police had the tools, information, and manpower to challenge the River Kings on multiple fronts. The gang, once untouchable, was beginning to feel the pressure. But the fight was far from over, and the coming months would test the resilience of both sides in a battle that would grip the nation. In early 2020, law enforcement agencies across Europe received a massive boost when French police successfully hacked into Encrypted's servers, the encrypted messaging service widely used by organized crime groups, including the River Kings. This unprecedented breach exposed millions of messages, offering a treasure trove of intelligence that had previously been impossible to access. For years, encrypted phones had shielded the gang's communications, but now, their digital fortress was crumbling. The data obtained included detailed conversations, shipment plans, payment instructions, and even internal disputes. Investigators pored over thousands of messages, piecing together the complex network that had remained hidden for so long. Code names and aliases were matched to real identities, uncovering the true scale of the River Kings operation. The encrypted messages revealed who was responsible for organizing shipments, managing finances, and coordinating violence. British authorities immediately shared this intelligence with the National Crime Agency and other law enforcement partners, sparking a wave of coordinated investigations and arrests. Police prepared meticulously for simultaneous raids to prevent the gang members from warning each other or destroying evidence. Dawn raids struck homes, warehouses, and businesses in Liverpool and beyond. The once untouchable River Kings found themselves caught off guard. The revelations from encrypted messages not only exposed the gang's criminal activities, but also highlighted their ruthless methods. Plans for murders, threats against rivals, and efforts to bribe officials were all laid bare. The volume and detail of evidence made it nearly impossible for defendants to deny involvement. The encrypted phone hack was a game-changer, turning years of speculation into solid proof. The impact was immediate. Over the course of several months, dozens of arrests were made across the UK and Europe. Key figures who had operated in the shadows were finally brought into custody. Trials began, backed by overwhelming digital evidence. The police had cracked the code that had long protected the River Kings. Though the gang's empire had been shaken, investigators knew this was only the beginning. The massive intelligence haul would fuel ongoing efforts to dismantle the organization entirely. The fall of the River Kings' digital shield marked the start of a new chapter in the fight against organized crime in Liverpool. In 2021, Liverpool faced one of the most significant criminal trials in its recent history. The courtroom was packed as prosecutors unveiled the decade-long saga of the River Kings, exposing the sprawling drug empire that had evaded capture for so many years. For the first time, the full scope of their operation was laid bare, supported by an overwhelming amount of evidence collected through undercover work, financial investigations, and the explosive Encrypted hack. The trial was a landmark moment, not only for Liverpool, but for the entire UK. Prosecutors detailed how the River Kings had controlled the cocaine trade, moving tons of drugs through the port of Liverpool and laundering millions in profits. They showed how encrypted phones and offshore accounts had shielded the gang from law enforcement, and how a network of loyal foot soldiers had protected their leaders from exposure. Key figures once thought untouchable were now on the stand, or in the defendant's dock, facing charges ranging from drug trafficking and money laundering to conspiracy to commit murder. The courtroom heard harrowing accounts of violence and intimidation, as well as the carefully constructed financial web that hid the gang's profits. The evidence was so strong that many defendants chose to plead guilty rather than risk harsher sentences at trial. Despite their best efforts to deny involvement, the accused couldn't escape the digital trail that tied them to their crimes. Messages ordering shipments, discussions about payments, and plans for violent reprisals had all been recorded and decrypted. Witness testimony from former associates, combined with forensic accounting, painted a picture of a well-organized criminal enterprise led by men who had operated with ruthless efficiency. The sentences handed down were severe. Several top leaders received decades-long prison terms, with some facing life sentences. The court made it clear that their reign of control over Liverpool's drug trade had come to an end. However, even with the River Kings behind bars, the trial highlighted a harsh reality. The criminal networks they built were deeply rooted, and the power vacuum they left could quickly be filled by others. Still, the trial was a major victory for law enforcement and a turning point in the fight against organized crime in Merseyside. It sent a message that no one was beyond the reach of the law. With the fall of the River Kings, Liverpool's criminal landscape was forever changed. Their empire, built on secrecy, discipline, and ruthless efficiency, had been dismantled piece by piece. But the story didn't end with prison sentences and court rulings. The aftermath revealed just how deeply entrenched these networks were, and how difficult it would be to stop the cycle of crime completely. In the months following the high-profile convictions, law enforcement focused on cleaning up the remnants of the gang's operations. Crackdowns on street-level dealers and the seizure of assets continued, targeting the financial infrastructure that supported the trade. Authorities worked to disrupt the flow of drugs through the docks, increasing inspections and tightening security. New technologies were introduced to monitor suspicious activity, making it harder for smugglers to use the same routes and methods as before. However, the removal of the River Kings' leadership created a power vacuum. Rival groups and emerging gangs saw an opportunity to step in and claim territory. Without the strict discipline and control imposed by the River Kings, violence in some neighborhoods spiked as these groups fought for dominance. It became clear that dismantling one criminal empire didn't automatically mean peace. It sometimes led to chaos. Community efforts grew alongside police initiatives. Local organizations and outreach programs sought to offer alternatives to young people vulnerable to gang recruitment. Education, job training, and social support became essential parts of the strategy to prevent the rise of new criminal leaders. The hope was to break the cycle by addressing the root causes that had allowed the River Kings to flourish. The story of the River Kings serves as a stark reminder of how organized crime adapts and evolves. Their decade-long reign showed the dangers of combining cutting-edge technology with traditional criminal networks, but it also demonstrated the power of persistence, collaboration, and innovation in law enforcement. Though the River Kings are gone, the fight against organized crime in Liverpool continues. Their downfall marked a new chapter, a warning and a lesson that no empire is truly untouchable, but vigilant